What
I
do
think
you?
the comment was, oh yeah! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! It's crying time.
Content warnings for this episode include transphobia, transmisogyny, misgendering, ableism, Saneism, trauma from Christianity, mental health, misgendering, bullying, sexism, and suicidality. Genderful would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests have lived and dwelt upon. Today, we honor the Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinabewaki.
And the Treaty for 6 First Nations in the Homeland of the Métis.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands, and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond. Howdy, folks. Welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse folks about their special interests. Hi, I'm Miranda Katita, and my pronouns are she, her. The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, and gender diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender diverse community. We want our audience to know that we hold multiple diverse identities and bring these lenses to the show with our passion for telling our stories. I identify as trans feminine, neurodivergent, queer, and a person of color residing in Canada. We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you. As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is the monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. If you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There is no social or medical prerequisites to be included in the community. Welcome to GenderfulPodcast, a show interviewing gender diverse people about their special interests. This week, our guest is Aranock, she, they, they pronouns, and they are chatting with us about their YouTube art. I am very excited about this, as I was saying before. So I came to know Aranock through Jesse Gender, friend of the show, and also a personal friend of mine. And Aranock is a long-time contributor on Jesse's channel. She's done editing, she's done co-writing. She's in fact Jesse's creative partner. So, and she actually works with quite a lot of other people on YouTube. So there's a good chance that your favorite YouTubers' videos are better because of Aranock. So, welcome to Genderful, Aranock. It is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Hi, chat.
Yeah, so let's jump right into the interview. So there's a couple of questions that we'd like to ask all of our guests. The first one being is, what might be the things that you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
I have a couple of videos about
Yeah, for those of you who maybe are not familiar with you and are getting to know you for the first time right now.
I mean, when I was little, I was always a little bit gender ambiguous in general. I often got interpreted as a little girl, even as a kid. So, I don't know. I think I was always like constantly put in a position from a pretty young age of having to hide my genuine self, and sort of deny it. So, we're going right to the. I'm sorry. There's not this conversation does not have nice. Yeah, I experienced a lot of violence when I was a kid, and so I think it's not so much that I started in the closet as I put myself in there to survive. So,
yeah.
And I think the later half of my life was a lot of just re-allowing myself to be myself at all. And I don't think that makes me any less or more trans than anyone else who has experienced it's more in the angle of realizing much later, or not always feeling a certain way and changing. But yeah, I was always a little weird. And I was never very good at performing the expected gender role that I was assigned. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely valid. I mean, absolutely, like, that doesn't make you any more or less trans. And that's an unfortunate reality that a lot of trans folks have to go through, is that they do have to hide parts of themselves for their own safety.
Yeah, no, I just always worry when I talk about my own experience, because I know there's a lot of people that feel like, oh, I didn't know until I was much older, or I didn't always feel that way.
Mhm.
And I don't want them to feel like when they hear experiences like mine that theirs is less valid or whatever, just because mine happens to fit more into the I guess acceptable narrative that is spun about trans people that we always knew.
Yeah, well,
Um
it's kind of like, I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, it's um, like I quote unquote always knew, but that was a hindsight realization,
yeah.
where but it's again, like, there's no right or wrong way to be trans. Like, whatever your personal journey is, like, however you came to, figure out your own gender, is valid. And no one can really tell you that you did it wrong or you did it right or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, your experience is just as valid as anyone else's. Now, I mean, our experiences with gender, as it's hardly a straight path, no pun intended. So, um, it's often, it's a long and winding road. So how would you say your relationship to gender has evolved over time?
um I think growing up it was a prison, you know.
Mm,
It was something I had to perform a certain way that wasn't natural to me just to survive. And as an adult, like going to university and meeting other trans people and realizing that I wasn't some freak anomaly, that there was people like me,
yeah,
because
yeah.
growing up, I think the only representation of trans people I ever saw was like that South Park comedy and, you know, harmful sitcoms and
Mm,
types of media that are just particularly egregiously off and also don't understand trans people even slightly. Um, so I think my perception of my gender for a long time, like especially when I was growing up, was that I was a wrong, not so much that I was a man.
mm.
Um, I don't think I ever really identified with my assigned gender. I just kind of felt like I wasn't able to do anything else, so I was kind of stuck with it.
Yeah,
um, and being given permission to find things that kind of allowed me to come out of my shell a little bit. Um, and it took me a while to fully figure things out, and I have a very long video about that called Relativity.
oh,
Um,
we're gonna be talking about that later.
yeah, so it's definitely been a journey. Um, I think a large part of it was just I had so much built up shame,
Yes.
frankly, that it was hard for me to accept uh, it. And then once I did accept it and accept all of it, and it was kind of solely going, it's I'm a woman and that's okay. I don't have to do some special thing to be allowed to be myself. Because I think a long time I felt like I didn't wasn't worthy of being a woman, if that makes sense. And
Mm.
then I had the complexity feelings of just I'm not just I identify as a non-binary woman for people who don't know. And so yeah, I think for a long time it was just a little complex figuring it out.
Yeah, yeah, no,
uh
that's extremely relatable.
yeah, definitely a journey.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the what you just said about shame. I mean, oh boy, that's something I had to deal with for a very long time. And I think that's you'll find that as a very common theme in trans folks who come out later in life, where that's kind of a big component of why they don't transition or why they don't explore their gender. And especially that whole, like, imposter syndrome that you get, like, early on in your transition. Like, I remember about a year into my transition, it was like International Women's Day, and I was just like, do I get to participate in this? Like, am I allowed? And the answer is yes, but like, there's still that, like, it takes a while sometimes before you can accept yourself as, what you are, and kind of overcome society's expectations of what you should be.
Yeah, it's a bit of a process, bit of a fight in some ways with
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
I
yeah. It takes some
think
of us a bit longer, but yeah, it's not easy.
yeah, there's a quote from I think Crooked Kingdom by Lee Bardugo that okay, and I referenced in the section that I did on disability in Lady Night Six of Crows video, but I think the quote is pain is something you can endure, but shame, that's what kills you. And
Mm,
yeah, I think our society puts such an aggressive degree of shame onto trans people, and it kind
mm.
of eats you up.
It does. It really does. But I would love, speaking of transitions, I would love to transition into our special topic for today. So why don't we start at the beginning? How did you first get started making videos on YouTube?
My first video was my coming out video. Um, but I have to go further back to explain that entire sequence of things.
Mhm.
When I was 18, 19, started university, I began helping with charity streams online, actually, on Twitch. So mostly was in the streaming space. And I just kept meeting people through that. And I was really good at what I did. So people would have me come help with other charity streams, and I get to know more people. And um, kind of ended up a moderator on like a large amount of like leftist political Twitch, not the debate ding dongs, but more in the news reporty type zone
Okay.
or variety streamers, I guess. Um, and I was doing university at the time. I'm still doing university. I'm almost done. It's been a long journey. And on a, I think yeah, it was Sophie from Mars, which that's a whole thing, but charity stream a few years ago. I met what's now my best friend, Lady Night the Brave.
Oh.
Yeah, I love her. And I've been thinking about making a video for a very, very long time, but I didn't want to make videos before I came out, and I felt like I couldn't come out at the job that I was working at the time. And then I got laid off because of COVID. Long
Mm,
story. And I was like, oh, may as well do it.
might as
So
well.
and okay had been pressuring me to make videos for a while. She kept being like, you should make one. You should make one. You're good. You should make some. And I think I'd been doing some. I have a bad memory, so I've been doing some feedback and stuff for video essays for a while then. But yeah, so my first video was my coming out video. And like I posted that to Facebook and a couple of other places. Like that was how I came out to my entire extended family. My parents knew, my younger siblings knew, and obviously my friend group knew, but not many people outside of that. So, and I hated coming out at that point. I'd already done it
Mm.
multiple times in terms of like sexuality. I didn't get it right. And that's okay. Sometimes it's a bit of a journey. Sometimes slowly figuring yourself out.
Yeah. Well, you know what they
I've had
say, you
that
don't come out
happen
just
again
once.
recently. No, and I just hated the process of coming out over and over and over to one person at a time. And it's just I wanted to get it done. I
Hmm.
never have to think about it again. Foolish, because I still figured things out later. So yeah, my first video was called What is Non-Binary, and I explained what being non-binary is from my perspective at the time. I struggled to find value with my first couple of videos. A lot of people still really love them, so that's the only reason I haven't unlisted them, being full honest. Because I think people would be sad if I did.
Aw.
Um, but yeah, I used that as my coming out video. At the time I came out as non-binary, I was going by they, them pronouns. I was still kind of figuring things out. I think it was that thing of like just slowly giving myself permission, I guess. And then yeah, I just kept making video essays and figured out I was a woman, figured out my pronouns a little better, figured out I was ace. Though exactly how I identify within that still right now. I'm
Yeah.
figuring things out.
I mean, that's a lifelong journey. Like it's
Yeah.
And we have a comment here from Gender Master. They came out as lesbian, then polyamorous, then non-binary, then also trans, then pansexual. They feel like it just never
Okay.
ends.
Yeah, so here's my order. Was bi, pan, non-binary, ace, ace lesbian, non-binary woman, ace lesbian. And yeah, it was a whole pathway, whole pipeline of discovery. Yeah, so it's interesting because my first video was my coming out video, and I very purposely presented it as maximally like pre-transition as possible at the start of the video.
Mm.
And because I've changed so much over the years and I got on HRT and stuff, my channel's in a weird way sort of a gender transition timeline
Yep.
that you can look at if you watch
Mm-hmm.
it from the first video onwards. I apologize if you started the first video. It's rough. The first I
I
struggle with
mean,
the
I'm
first
pretty
couple
sure
of
that's
words.
true of every YouTube creator.
I think it's any artist. You have to
Yeah.
suck first. You
Yeah,
have to suck
exactly. And
first.
it's
And
just any skill. Like no one's born good at stuff. Like you have to.
no, I always struggle. I struggle with my early stuff because I just don't feel
Mhm.
it's representative of me as a person now or
Mhm.
my abilities as an artist. I mean, even then, the reason it's specifically those first 4 videos is because I was working with a really bad software. And so there's all these technical issues that come out in the final project because I was using Shotcut at the time. And the drastic jump in quality between working in Shotcut to working in Resolve, like
Mm.
totally changed the quality. So it's not even representative of my skills then. And I think that's partly why those 4 bother me more so than anything that came after.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I, I mean, I totally get it. Cause like, I mean, I've been on YouTube for like 11, 12 years. And like my early videos are well before transition, like well before transition. And it's just like it's like I cringe sometimes if I like see some of those old videos. I'm just like, well, but I just leave them up anyway, because like whatever. Because like I feel like any trans creator, particularly trans creators that were active on the platform before they transitioned, not naming any names, but you know, there's quite a few of us. Um, and they leave their videos up from pre-transition. Like you can see their whole transition timeline.
Yeah. And I think there's a certain value to that. It's also difficult because it does mean that people can see not you, if that makes sense. Or I guess past you. I don't know. Still working out my feelings on past selves. It's complicated.
Mhm.
I'm working on a script right now about Undertale.
Mm.
Don't tease too much, but a lot of it was about exploring those feelings about past selves I resent and
Yeah.
working through how that's an unhealthy feeling in some ways. Um, and how to process that and how to forgive a past self in some ways.
Yeah, that's
It's an
tough.
interesting video, very interesting because it did not start with that intention at all. It kind of just happened across the process of writing it.
Yeah.
It's still not done. It's like 26,000 at this
Oh my God.
um when I release that, it's I feel pretty confident in saying it's probably like going to be the definitive in-depth analysis of that game and some major ludonarrative concepts that I don't think have been explored as much on YouTube.
Mm.
I have a lot of interesting things to say.
I'm looking
Um,
forward to it. I mean, I'm always looking
and
forward to whenever a new Aranock video drops. So
I think the biggest thing too is that like so much of the analysis of Undertale is lacking a queer lens, and like I don't
yeah.
think you can understand Undertale without a queer lens. Um, I mean, every subsequent release of things has only increased the amount of queer text. Um, you know, where you have more and more explicitly trans characters. You have a lot going on in that game.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't want to tease it too much.
Oh, y'all
But
will just have to stay tuned.
there's a fight in the Switch version that's fundamentally just the gender dysphoria fight.
Incredible. I should replay that game because I kind of bounced off of it the first time I played.
That's
But
interesting. That's an explicit part of the video. Is that
I
I bounced
know because
really hard
I
off.
mean, I've seen you perform part of that video already, so it's and like yeah, like I was one of those people that kind of bounced off it. Like I played through the whole game, but like I would kind of like I don't know, I kind of reached a point where I was like, okay, I get it. But like I don't know if I actually got it. So yeah, like the fact that you're devoting like so much of your energy to this, I think that's a really good reason for me to kind of reevaluate it and give it another chance. So
Yeah, there's a longer story behind it, one I will probably get to in a video eventually, but not anytime soon. Where I want to talk about Homestuck and trauma and things. I will say nothing else about it, but
I know so many queer and trans people that talk about Homestuck, and I feel like I missed out on that because like I'm just like
it's
a
worth
generation
reading it
older.
now. No, it's worth reading now. It's worth reading now. I think Homestuck has a lot of language that is a lot at times. There's some pretty heavy themes. Like it's I think it's heavy work, but I think it's heavy work with a reason. I think it's messy, but the messy parts add to its value because I really do think that it captures what it was like being a traumatized 12, 13, 14-year-old on the internet when I was growing up. And it captures very complex dynamics and very messy people in realistic ways that I find really valuable. And it, yeah, like it's dated, but it feels like the datedness is a snapshot of a specific era and a specific type of people. And I think it's just interesting to read it from that perspective. But anyway, there's a long story behind why I didn't finish Homestuck the first time I read it in high school, involving abusers and things. But a little while after, I played Undertale for the first time, and I think I bounced off of it partially because of where I was at the time. And those two things are very interconnected. And there's a song I used to listen to when I was reading Homestuck. It's called Quarters of Time from Chrono Trigger. And my brain kind of connected it to that traumatizing period of time in high school. And I like exposure therapy myself with it later in my 20s because I love that song and I couldn't hear it without getting triggered because I have severe CPTSD. So I was like, maybe I should go back and finish reading Homestuck and maybe that would help me like move past something. And it really did. There's a conversation in Act 5 or 6 between two characters that just ruined me and also kind of healed something in me in a complicated way in terms of my former best friend who was quite abusive. And so after having finished reading all of Homestuck and knowing how connected Toby Fox was to that project, I felt like maybe I was ready to give Undertale another shot and try to hear it for what it was saying instead of just dismissing it as I had when I first played through. And I knew if I was going to do it that I was only going to play the pacifist route, true pacifist route, and then I was never going to play the game again. So I recorded it. I was like, maybe I'll write a video about this act of re-engaging with a past work that I bounced off of. Maybe I'll get something really interesting, and maybe I'll bounce off of it and I'll have a video to say something about why I think the work is overrated. Now I'm like, this one of the greatest works of ludo narrative ever created. It's a masterpiece. And I have a lot to say about it. But that's where that video kind of came out of, was re-engaging with Homestuck. And then
yeah, no, that sounds super interesting. I'm very much looking forward to that. So Aranock, you have a reputation as a pillar of YouTube for collaborating with so many other creators on the platform, such as Jesse, Gender, and Turb. How did you establish these relationships?
No. I think it's one of those things where it depends on the relationship, obviously. I think a lot of it is just a willingness or an openness to talk to people. Um an openness to opportunities when they appear, and just a lot of I don't know, I'm very autistic. I I don't understand why
You're among friends. So like I think our whole Discord
I
servers is on the spectrum.
yeah, it's I don't know, it's with a lot of things. I spent an entire childhood, teenage years, everything, uh feeling like a miserable, alone, weirdo that no one would ever really like in any meaningful capacity and would always abandon. And then I spent my
Mm,
entire adulthood being told that people like hearing what I have to say and that they like spending time with me. And I don't know why. But for whatever reason, I seem to draw people in, and people, I think more so than anything, seek me out. I I do a lot of commission art stuff, but I don't generally go looking for clients. They kind of just come to me.
mm. That's
So
it's a good problem to
eh,
have.
I don't know. I'm sorry. It's probably an unsatisfying answer to the question. It doesn't really help with the people with networking,
No,
but
not at all.
I think
Not
the
at
biggest thing
all.
is just um being polite, listening. Something I try to do a lot of is just really listen. Um yeah, and know that you're not the be all end all authority on anything. So uh yeah, I think that's really
Yeah.
what it
I
comes
mean,
down
that's
to.
like how you describe like just that sense of like being weird and like why would anyone like it's just like your brain is confused when people are nice to you. And it's just
Very.
like I relate to that so hard because like I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat where like people seem to like me, people seem to like people come to me and I'm just like, why? I'm not that nice of a person. Like, what? It's just like I don't get it.
Yeah. No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I don't know. I I don't understand why people find me compelling and likable, because I spent so much time of my life being told I was not. And I
Yeah.
think I internalized that to some degree.
Yep.
And so when people are kind, my brain's first thought is they're trying to use me or they're lying.
Mm,
And unpacking that feeling's been a really long and hard project.
yeah.
Um, but I think if I was to answer the question like as best I can, I think it's just that I have learned as an adult. So I think I spent an entire childhood being told to shut up for being sincere, you know.
Mm,
Um, but as an adult, I found sincerity super valuable, because I think sincerity is kind of unfortunately rare in a lot of modern society. I think it's something that people are really missing or seeking right now. I think you can even see this in trends in media. I think the sort of era of South Park absolute cynicism, to an almost self-destructive degree of cynicism, and irony poisoning that gets occurred on the internet and things. I think
yeah.
people are very sick of it, and
Yep.
I think why some people gravitate towards me is purely from that aspect of I am sincere. Um, I don't think I'm a very nice person.
I think
I
you
think
are.
mm, and I don't think niceness is a very good attribute. I think niceness is how you make people feel comfortable,
Mm,
but I try to be a kind person, and
yeah. And a
kindness
lot
and
of people conflate the
niceness,
two.
not quite the same thing, and they kind of
Yeah.
clash.
Mm,
And I think when you're younger, honesty is kind of scary,
yeah.
and sincerity is difficult. That's especially teenagers, I think, really struggle with it. But as an adult in a world full of Baudrillardian, maps surpassing territories and everything being an illusion within illusion within illusion. Sincerity can kind of break through that. And the thing is that, like, I don't, people are like, oh, you're so nice when I compliment them. And I'm like, I'm not being nice. If I didn't mean it, I wouldn't say it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't compliment unless I think the compliment's warranted. And I also am honest. And I think a lot of people are scared to express sincere kindness, love, care, appreciation of other people at all, of any type. And so I think for privileged people, that's a very uncomfortable thing. And I do think that I tend to off-put certain types of people. And the way that I off-put people tends to be a good flag for them being not great politically, and also on views on marginalized people. But yeah, I think I tend to be a very, my heart is on my sleeve type of person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what has drawn certain types of people to me. And when it comes to professional work, especially in video essays and things, when you want someone to edit your script, you don't want someone that's going to be nice. You want someone who's going to go, yeah, that's fucking wrong.
Yeah.
And not in a mean way.
That's something where honesty is more valuable,
yeah,
is more valuable than saving someone's feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not being mean about it. I'm not being like, you're dumb or something.
No.
Like we're not doing ableism, but I mentioned that because like some people can take honesty as being that, and it's not the same thing. But like, I will compliment very earnestly, and I will also tell you when I think something's off very earnestly. And it's not because I want to make someone feel bad or that I want to feel superior, because I actually am very, very open about my mistakes. I talk about my mistakes very openly and frequently, and I try to keep that in mind, that I'm an incredibly fallible person, because everyone is. I think the baseline state of humanity is fallibility. Failing is to be human. And so I think part of why a lot of people reach out to me to script read things and stuff is that I will tell them when they're off, but I'll tell them because I care about them, because I want them to do well, because I want them to succeed. And then I think the other side of that is just that I think the reason why I've connected with a lot of people is just that I worked as a coach for about a decade. I have a lot of professional training in conflict resolution, in conversation and things. And so while I have bad social anxiety and while I deal with all those types of things, I know how to push through it and just talk to someone. And I think a lot of people have never learned how to do that. It doesn't make it easy, especially with the types of disabilities I have. And so I really do have all the empathy in the world for people who can't. But when it comes to trying to build professional bridges in this space, I think you have to be willing to talk and to connect with other people. And it's tough. Sometimes you're going to put your trust in someone and they're really going to disappoint you, and that hurts. And it sucks.
That's life.
Every relationship, every connection is a risk. But I never want to become someone who is afraid to have that type of risk, because if you're never able to put your heart out into the vulnerable space, if you're never willing to be hurt, you're never going to connect with anyone.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So we actually have a question from our chat from producer Mirami. Do you have any tips for doing that pushing through to have a hard conversation?
God, it's really hard. It's very specific to the person. And like, I don't know, I'm coming back at it from a vast amount of experience. And at a bunch of training and things, and trying to distill that's difficult. But I would say in general, it's like, it's going to suck. And you have to just accept that up front, that even if it goes well, not going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of labor. You're going to be tired, and it's not going to be pleasant. It's never pleasant. It is never pleasant to have a hard conversation.
Yeah.
And mincing your words to try to make them feel better isn't necessarily going to help you. There's a couple of tricks, which is just one, being very clear that you don't think they have malicious intent. I think that's a really important one, because often when people hear someone say, you did a bad thing, what they hear is you intentionally wanted to do harm or something. The other layer of it, and this is really hard to get over, and some people you're just never going to reach, is that we live in a society where essentialization is a core tenet. And this goes back to various forms of Christian views in the world, right? And sin, Christian view on sin. And people often justify the things they do to themselves because they're a good person. They're an essentially good person, unlike those bad, shitty people. And so when someone says what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing is harmful, what they hear is bad people do wrong things. You have done a wrong thing. Therefore, you're a bad person. And their brain's logic is the premise is they're a good person. And so they go, well, no, I'm a good person. So it couldn't have been a bad thing. So therefore I did nothing wrong. And actually you're bad for telling me that I did something wrong. And so I think couching it really heavily in that you care about them, that criticism and feedback and letting someone know that they've hurt you is a gift. Just like boundaries are a gift.
Yeah.
It is also a question. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to be in community with you. I want to be around you. But to do that, we need to address this. Right? And that's really the central question of any attempt at establishing boundaries or any attempt at letting someone know that they've said something bigoted or done something bigoted. And I think the big thing is to not talk about it as they're bad, but talk about the action on its own.
Yeah.
Really focus on like, hey, this shin was harmful. Not you are harmful, not not essentializing even by accident with your nerve phrasing. Again, like all these things aren't going to work perfectly, but the point you're trying to get across is that this behavior is having this effect, and that something needs to change, but you're asking them because you know that they mean well and that you care about them and you want to be around them. And I think that's a really important element. And you're going to get people that just throw tantrums and are not mature enough to have a conversation like an adult where they're told they've messed up. And it sucks. I've had to have it many times where I'm on the receiving end of the conversation. Doesn't feel good. But there's a couple of things just talking professionally from a video essay standpoint that you can do to mitigate this, which is one, work with sensitivity readers and listen.
Yeah.
Like when you bring a sensitivity reader in, because I've had bad experiences. I've had terrible experiences as a sensitivity reader before with certain people who I won't name, but I don't work with because of that stuff. Where, they're super defensive of everything. And you're there not to tell them how to get something, to convey things in the best way possible or as accurately as possible. But instead, they want you there to make them feel good and tell them they're doing.
I was just thinking that.
You're tokenized. But people who do genuinely care are going to listen. I'm not gonna be like, to be full honest, I don't really trust someone until I've seen how they respond, because I just can't. I've had too many experiences with people that seemed lovely, to a point. But the instant that any criticism occurred, complete meltdown, completely inappropriate behavior, and so, whatever form of privileged, fragility they hold.
Yeah. And it's signaling that they're emotionally immature and you probably shouldn't work with them.
Yeah, I don't think it's not just emotionally immature though. And I think like, maturity is a whole complicated thing, but
It is, yeah.
I think for a lot of people, they don't want to to really care. What they want to be told is that they're a good person. And this is why I really dislike any essentialized worldview. And it's really hard to have any sort of restorative justice conversation with anyone that has an essentialized worldview, because they see people in a sort of black and white context of they're either good or they're bad. People are not good or bad. People do good things, they do bad things, and what is good and bad is always subjective, always socially defined in some way, always specific to the person. So
like good people do bad things all the time, and bad people do good things, and really just I don't know if I really necessarily like agree with the like people can be put in these buckets of good or bad people. Like
that's what I mean. I don't see anyone like that, because people are people. And here's the thing. Even if essentialization was true, if an essentially bad person, like deep in their core, they only ever act in selfish ways, if every single action they took ever put kindness and health and warmth and positivity into the world, would it really matter what's in their heart or what's in their head? And this is why I care more about behaviors and not essentializations, and not whether you're good or bad. It's cause and effect that really matters. So
this whole conversation is really reminding me of one of my favorite shows ever, BoJack Horseman, where for those of you who have not seen the show, the main character does a lot of really horrible things throughout the course of the show, but is obsessed with the idea of being a good person and keeps asking, it's like, am I a good person? Am I a good person? Am I a good guy? And eventually, like, one of the other characters tells him, it's like there are no good guys, there are no bad guys, like we're all just guys.
But it's just about, like, what do you do to other people? At the end of the day, what are you putting out in the world? There's a quote I used in a couple of videos. I can't remember the source of it off the top of my head, but it's reflect, love, and abundance. And not the term reflect, right? Because I think love and care, it takes energy, it takes effort.
It does.
Like, real love and care is not effortless. And I think a lot of people want relationships, they want life, they want things to be effortless. And that's not reality. Being good, be nice, being kind, caring, they take effort, but they're worth it every time. And it's just about putting that energy into spaces and with people that also reflect that back at you. Reciprocal, not transactional. I used to be a professional, like full-time athlete, way back when. Trained all the time, really competitive. But the thing I loved about my rowing team and about a lot of people that I raced in rowing is that there is a mentality of you're not here to destroy other people or whatever. You're here to do your best. And doing your best isn't just about you, it's about giving the gift of doing your best to everybody else there, because that will push them to be their best. And likewise, they will do their best, and that will push you to be your best. And obviously you want to win, but victory is very relative. Victory is getting a PB, personal best. It's doing just a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit cleaner, a little bit better technique every single time, and pushing each other and encouraging each other when you do. It's about celebrating other people's victories, a cooperative mindset of competitiveness, not a community of strength. I think one of my most positive memories of rowing was Canada Games pair final, which I was a lightweight rower, and I raced in the heavyweight stuff in a few boats at Canada Games. I did pretty good. But I just distinctly remember finishing that pair race, getting off at the dock, bunch of exhausted, big, muscly people just giving each other hugs. Just like love and kindness and celebration of the other person's accomplishments as much as your own. And I think a lot of that stuff is sort of foundational to how I view things in general. Is that we should all be building each other, not tearing people down. And I think I think a lot of people dedicate a lot of their time, and I get why, to trying to like fight shitty people. And I think a lot of that time could be better spent caring for and spending time with your community, building it,
Yeah,
and
I
caring about it.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to segue into the next question. This is one of my favorite questions that I wrote. So one of my favorite comments ever on one of your videos was something like, "Oh yeah, it's crying time."
Yeah, and
How do you?
I think the comment was, oh yeah, exclamation point, exclamation exclamation point. It's crying time.
So
Um,
the actual question that I have about that is, how do you feel about your art emotionally affecting others so deeply?
Complicated. um, I think for a long time I felt conflicted. Uh, you know, because I wrote a whole thing about this actually for a video that I will eventually finish.
Mm.
It's really heavy video. It's about the video game Signalis and transgenocide. It gets dark,
Ooh.
and it's been tough to work on. And I've been writing it on and off since I played Signalis last year, like early last year. But um, I think for a long time I was trying to fight to make a happy video, and I just couldn't do it. I don't know. I'm not a particularly I guess joyful person in a lot of ways.
Mm.
I'm a bit macabre. My favorite poet's Poe. Like, um, I have a lot of happiness in my life, but it's also just it's always I think intermingled and touched and affected by having pretty severe trauma and things. And so when I write about stuff, often there's a melancholy to it to some extent. And at a certain point, I just kind of embraced that what I do well and what I do for people is make them cry. Not in a mad way, not in a mean way, not upsetting them,
Mhm.
for the most part. But I think crying is one of the most important things you can do to be able to be content, happy. Uh, I think life is about contrast in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
an emotional contrast, especially. Uh, you know, and I think building a space uh, that is comfortable, that is safe to feel things, that I think is really valuable, because I think our society heavily polices everyone about their feelings. You know, um, there's a lot of people will talk very extensively about like, oh, the boys don't cry thing and stuff, and the men aren't
Mm.
allowed to cry. But I don't think
Boy.
we
Yeah.
acknowledge enough. I don't think we acknowledge enough that the gender policing around emotions occurs on all levels. It's just that if men cry, they get called a woman. And if women cry, we confirm our lower status on the hierarchical.
Mm.
And I think everyone, especially my age, has been heavily policed away from allowing themselves to feel complex emotions and feel sad. You're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to present as happy all the time. You're supposed to be joyful. And I think social media has compounded aspects of that because
Oh,
there's sort of the
100%.
surveillance aspect.
100%.
Um, and I think my videos, and I'm pretty confident in saying this just because of the comments and things, like a lot of what people get from them is like, I've had people tell me that one of my videos was like the first thing that allowed them to cry after like years about like certain traumas or certain difficult things they'd experienced and
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a comment that I think about on a basically weekly basis. It was on my Midnight Mass video, where someone basically detailed that the video was the only thing that helped them after they were sexually assaulted by a priest, and basically like lost their entire, church community. It took long time for them to heal, and the only thing that they found helpful was my video, and that they watched it on repeat pretty regularly.
Aw.
I get emotional with that comment every day.
I
But
mean, I'm
but
getting emotional just thinking about it now.
but I think that's what my videos do. I think
Mhm.
I think so rarely are we given permission or space to feel something, and so rather than trying to pull my punches or not make people feel uncomfortable things, I think I am skilled at making people feel uncomfortable things in ways they want.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big reason why your videos resonate with the people that do. I mean, like speaking personally, like not just your videos, but you know, other people in the space. It's some of my favorite videos I've ever watched were ones that like made me ugly cry for like 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Best videos.
Yeah.
Like if I can recommend two channels that do that for me, Lady Night the Brave and Bread Sword. Both do videos that right in the heart. Bread Sword's Gurren
Yeah.
Lagann video, if you've ever seen it, ruins me.
Oh my
Absolutely
God.
gorgeous essay
Yeah.
making.
I mean, I had that happen to me with this is actually how I became a big fan of Jessie was one of her videos did that to me. And that's how I became a fan of hers, and that's how like, you know, we became friends and everything. So like
That's awesome.
one of these days maybe I'll share that story, but it's because it's pretty it's oh
Personal.
boy, that was a very dark time of my life when I watched that video. So
Yeah.
but yeah, no, let's we were talking before about sincerity. I think that really, really comes across, and it allows people, it kind of like you said before, it gives people permission to feel these feelings. Not that they need that permission. Like you
But they
don't
kind
need
of
someone else's
do.
permission.
You don't need
Yeah, but it's just
permission, but
like,
most people have been
yeah,
so taught that
yeah,
they kind of do. Like they
exactly.
shouldn't need. They
They shouldn't
shouldn't,
need it.
but they
Exactly.
do.
Exactly. So
And
like that
I'm
Jesse video I was
yeah.
talking about before, it gave me permission to feel those feelings.
Yes.
So like,
And once you
yeah.
let the floodgates open, it allows you
Hmm.
I think a lot of people are very I'm going to use a word. I'm going to explain why I used it the way that I did because I have a very specific perspective on what that word actually means, and I think most people's like I'm an AI and machine learning specialist. I'm an expert
Hmm.
on knowledge and choice making and things. So when I say something is intelligent or unintelligent, I don't mean some inherency thing. It's just a intelligence within how it should actually be used is relative to a task. It is not a value judgment. It is merely a judgment of current capacity to complete that task, right? And that is fundamentally mutable. That's an important task. But I think a lot of people are emotionally unintelligent. And when I say that, I don't mean in an ableist sort of inherency way. I just mean that they haven't developed that skill set because they've never had anyone teach them. And it's important to have that sort of thing of getting to feel emotions, examining why you're feeling what you're feeling and what that means for you. And if you never feel things, if you never give yourself permission to feel things, you cannot develop emotional intelligence, and you're not going to understand other people. You're not going to understand yourself, and you're not going to handle those emotions well when you get into difficult topics. There's a really old video that I did on Doom that's really not about Doom. What it's about is media and art that allows you to feel anger and things in productive ways. It talks about metal music and the effect that metal music has on metalheads, which is actually why metalheads, everybody knows this if you know metalheads, super chill people, super relaxed, very
Oh yeah.
calm. Do you want to know why? Because they practice dealing with
Yes.
anger. Like that's
Yes.
actually what the feelings are doing. Horror is a way of practicing dealing with fear
Hmm.
and sadness, right? We watch and engage with these sorrowful works of art because they let us develop that skill. And a lot of people do not allow themselves to cry. They do not allow themselves to feel. And the thing is, if you never allow yourself to feel the negative emotions, you will never really fully feel the good ones either.
Hmm.
All about the contrasts. And
100% agree.
yeah, I think sadness is like really important. I think it is important to cry sometimes because
Absolutely.
you have to let go of it. I mean, when you cry, you literally release things from your eyes.
Hmm.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
just really think that um that's so important.
Yeah. So on that
Yeah.
note, we're coming up on our on our break time. So this has been a wonderful conversation. So we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some specific videos. So very much looking forward to that. So this is a good time for you to take your meds, get some water, go to the washroom, whatever you got to do. And when we come back, we'll be chatting some more with Aranock. All right, welcome back, everyone. So, if you're just tuning in, we are here with Aranock, YouTuber extraordinaire, and we're talking about their arts and their various projects. And now we're going to be talking about some specific videos. So, the first one I want to talk about is one of my favorite videos of yours, and one of your best videos, in my opinion. It was queer relativity. Oh my God, I can't talk today. Queer relativity. And it's not just my opinion, but it was also recognized by the British Film Institute's Best Video Essay list. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of that project? How did that get going?
I mean, I talk about it pretty openly in the video. But so I had a sociolinguistics class that I took, like a 400 sociolinguistics class that I took, and I had a bunch of stuff I'd written in there that I wanted to convert into a video essay at some point, or aspects of it. Ironically enough, that's the stuff that ended up the most cut in the final cut. I got about 15 minutes of that video like a week or two before release. Like, it was pretty close to release. Just didn't feel like I felt like it was too dense and too academic, those bits. So ironically enough, that's what removed it. And then rereading Watchmen, and I was just having a shower, and I was just thinking about that structure, right? And then I was thinking about queer temporality, because I've been thinking about that a lot. I think it's an Abigail Thorne video before she came out.
Okay.
I think it was one of her ones. Well, it was a coming out video, but it wasn't her trans coming out video. I think it was the previous one, where they talked about heterotemporality.
Okay, yeah, because she came out as bi like ages ago,
a
right?
year
Yeah.
before coming out as trans.
Yeah.
And so thinking about all those different things kind of in combination, and I realized, oh, I can do the linguistics script. I was thinking about linguistic relativity, and then I've always found linguistic relativity really fascinating, and queer temporality, and yeah, that's kind of where the concept of queer relativity as a term came from. And I'm really hoping that at some point it'll get picked up by some academic or something and put into real WGSD works or something. That's something I want to happen. I want my stuff to be cited in academic papers, which
That's the dream right
has
there.
happened once. The Matrix video is cited briefly in a thesis paper, a master's thesis paper about the monolith. And
Nice.
it was funny because they were messaging saying, like, the deadline's too close, I can't watch the new monolith. And reference that. And I still need to read that paper. They sent me the paper and I want to read it. But it's very flattering to get a little bit reference. Can I give a definition of queer relativity for those who haven't seen the video? Well, it took me 2.5 hours, so sure.
Can you give
no.
us 10-second version of your 2.5-hour video?
I will give the definition, but like, it's probably best experienced after the 2 hours of explaining before I give the definition. So I have to go search the document. Okay.
Yes, Mary, you should absolutely just go watch it, because it's fantastic. It's probably one of the best video essays I've seen.
Queer relativity is the way in which queer language reshapes our ability to communicate and comprehend not just the world and ourselves, but also time and our relationship to it. It recontextualizes and restructures mysteries into a comprehensible experience, placing these nonlinear forms into a clear structure, letting us and others understand. That is my brief-ish definition, but it's a dense concept. It's like it's like you can get a quick brief summary of Judith Butler's discussions of performativity of gender, but it's not the same as like reading the text. It's not a substitute for it. The understanding is limited by the brevity.
Yeah, well, it's like so like I follow, like, so I like physics from a hobbyist perspective. So Richard Feynman, who's a Nobel Prize winning physicist, was once asked to explain magnetism in a simple way, and he literally said, like, I can't explain it any simpler than this, because then you're not going to understand what it actually is.
And that's the problem, is that a lot
Mm.
of stuff, especially if it's complex,
Mhm.
and like I hate to say, there's some things that cannot be done briefly. And this idea that some
Mhm.
people have, where they're like, oh, you can't explain it like simply, you don't really no. Actually, the problem is that the better you understand something, the harder it is to simply explain it,
Yeah.
because most simple explanations are fundamentally removing so much detail as to barely be actually relevant to the original thing. This is what a lot of physics is, right? Like most physics
Mhm.
you learn is a simplified version of a simplified version of a simplified version of a simplified version of a simplified version. Then you learn a
Mhm.
slightly less simplified version. Then you listen, you know, you go to university, you learn a slightly less simplified version, then a
Yeah.
slightly less simplified version, slightly less, because the abstraction and discretization of the information, you know, that fidelity is lost, and there are some concepts that are just fundamentally complex.
Mhm.
Um, and that's just an unfortunate reality. Sometimes things take an explainer that takes time. That's why I get really annoyed when people are like, why is this video so long? Because that's the length it needs to be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've made videos 1 minute long, and I've made videos 6 hours long. And they're the video length they need to be for the
Oh,
concept I'm
we'll be talking
discussing.
about a 6-hour video in a second here.
Yeah, well, I've only made the 1 6 hour, thankfully. But
Yeah.
like
And
it's
like, I
not
mean, I get it. Like people like, especially like, adults with like children and stuff like that. It's like, you
I
have
get that
like,
it's a lot, but it's also just
yeah.
like,
But it's also, it's
can you
like,
watch a documentary series? Or like,
yeah.
do you go to a TV show creator and you're like, your TV show's too long. You gotta remove episodes. It's too long for me. I can't watch that. It's too long. Like it's just it's so, because it's not a standard that would be applied. And I have gotten that comment on every video by someone, and then I've gotten on every video, including the 6 hour one, people were like, this is too short. You cannot satisfy everyone. But
Yeah.
people have this idea that they're entitled to the entire thing being made specifically for their needs. Like
Mhm.
there's this one comment on it that was like, I don't understand why you don't post the video in 20-minute chunks. I can only watch 20 minutes at a time between my breaks at work, so you have to post it like that. And I'm like, who are you? I don't know you. Why
Yeah.
should I cater? Like, I just imagine
Hey, I
going
mean,
to a
they paid a lot
film,
of money for your video, right?
yeah, the free video that we spent a year making, or the free video you can watch for free
Yeah.
on the free app. Like I know it's just like, just watch it in 20-minute chunks and come back later. Pause it. There were some people who were really mad that we didn't have the chapter markers up, and I was just like, it's a 6 hour video. We had to make changes right up to the last minute. We were contemplating if we were going to cut certain things to try to avoid a copyright claim, but we didn't want to sabotage the video by doing it. The problem is that like the claim was like, write a section. If you remove it, it like makes sections of the other parts of the video confusing, and so we didn't do it for like the first 3 4 days. And there's some people that were acting like we'd like personally come into their house, like spit in their face and like grab their head. You're gonna watch 6 hours right now. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
It's like no
it's not,
one's making you
no
do
one's
that.
making you. No, but like there's so, it's so weird. But I genuinely think that there's some people that the internet isn't a real place. Like there isn't real things connected to it. It's all signs, no, like there's no signified thing. It's basically, it's all signifiers, no the original sign that the signifier points to, right? And so to them, it's all about them, and if it doesn't perfectly comport to what they want. So this is me getting my petty grievance, because I
Oh,
pet peeve
hey, go
pet
for it.
peeve of people complaining about length of videos, where their only complaint is video long or video short, and I'm just like, okay, but is your complaint like how the video uses that length? And my favorites are the ones where they'll be like, I don't understand why they include this, this, and this, and it's like, because you didn't watch the part where those things became relevant. Like they're not just there for no reason.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I really try to slice videos down hard. I do it for other people. You know, people bring me in specifically because I do slice things down where I can. But sometimes things just are the length they're gonna be. And the Star Wars video, like it's hard to tell because you're watching a 6 hour video. Do you know how much I sliced from that video? How much Jesse
Oh,
sliced in the edit? Like as much as was possible without removing entire points. And it's not an analysis of a film or a couple of films. It is an analysis of 50 years of books, TV, films, comics, several major world history sections, the entire life of a single creator. Like, it's not a small work, and it's not covering a small amount of topics, and it's covering them in depth. And I find it funny that people, it's like, some people think that everything can be simplified down to the most bite-sized element, and some things can't. Some things just can't be that short, and they can't be that simple. And I frankly think that there's a dangerous desire to oversimplify the world, and amongst a lot of people, that leaves them vulnerable to conspiratorial thinking. Sorry, I'm gassy.
That's all right.
Because the underlying, like, one of the underlying, and this well documented and researched, the easiest, like, sources I would say to, like, easily access this information is all of Ian Danskin's The Alt-Right Playbook, particularly the Solidarity Low talk. I think it's called Why the Alt-Right is Like an Abusive Relationship. Anyway, but there's not a video I'm trying to think of that covers these things well, but there's a lot of research that covers this, which is that a lot of conspiratorial thinking comes out of a desire to simplify the world, to have a simple answer that makes you feel smart.
And special.
And special. And the world is not simple. And the world is not going to be simple. And it's scary for a lot of people. And I think, including a lot of leftists who think they're above this and are not, seen the amount of anti-Semitic conspiracies that just get, like, uncritically shared by people. My God.
Oh boy. So I'm a big conspiracy theory enjoyer. Like, and to clarify, I do not believe in conspiracy theories. I'm just fascinated by the theories themselves and the people who believe them. So same. I know a lot of conspiracy theories.
and a lot of it comes out of just, the world is complex and scary. I want it to feel comfortable. And I think the worst thing you can do to yourself, to the world, to other human beings, is to deny yourself the ability to experience discomfort. And not understand what discomfort is telling you. I think discomfort is the greatest teacher of all. And that's not exactly like a nice thing to say. Discomfort's not fun. No one wants to feel discomfort. But I think it's really important to allow yourself to experience discomfort. And sometimes experiencing discomfort, what it's going to teach you is this thing is bad. But if you understand why it's discomforting you, rather than just going thing bad and knee-jerk reaction to that emotional feeling, but like considering this was talking about that emotional intelligence thing earlier. That's what I mean. Like really understanding why you feel something and what that says. There's times where, oh, I have discomfort with this. Why do I have discomfort? And you realize, oh, that actually reinforces a bigoted viewpoint, or that's actually harmful, or that, leaves me in a vulnerable or shitty position. But when discomfort is also a teacher is when you're wrong. Because often when you're wrong, you're going to feel discomforted about being told you're wrong. This goes back to that thing we were talking about with conversations that are difficult with people when they mess up, and being the receiver of those types of conversations is that sometimes when you feel discomfort, the discomfort's wrong. Like, it's not a good or helpful emotion, and you're going to have to process that. But if your knee-jerk reaction is to just jump on discomfort immediately and go, that's bad, I'm not supposed to feel that, it's bad, I need to be comfortable. And I think privilege comes down to a belief that you're entitled to comfort. And in a lot of ways, I mean, that's not what privilege is, but I just think it's a excellent part of privilege. And so marginalized people who bring attention to things that are discomforting about your worldview, or about yourself, about the world in general, that is extremely discomforting. And that's obviously something that needs to be rejected. And so I think that underlying pursuit of comfort often underlies a lot of people, even marginalized people who should know better, that when they're told they're messing up, do not listen, double down, triple down, get super upset and angry about it. Because all they're thinking is, you're making me feel discomforted. I'm not supposed to feel discomforted. thus you are the problem because you're making me feel discomfort. Whereas that discomfort is a result of either, you know, cognitive dissonance or of realizing that you've made a mistake or done something wrong.
So we kind of like jumped topics a little bit because we'll circle
Sorry.
back to queer relativity later, but because I did really want to talk about the Star Wars video. So one of the questions from both myself and Meowster was what was it like playing the editor for that? And for those of you who have not seen the video, Aranock actually single-handedly animated a whole 18-minute long short film for it. So what was it like to work on such a huge undertaking for so long? Because that project took over a year.
I mean, obviously, it was in between so many other projects, so it's something that I pick up and put down, pick up, put down, pick up, put down. But Jesse and I recorded the majority of our stuff like last spring, like early last spring. So I have a different haircut. I don't have a tattoo. I look very different as the editor, which I think kind of helps because then when we recorded the layer 5 stuff, I look a completely different person. So basically, I think sometime last year, Jesse and I started talking about this, and I mentioned that I'd had this video that I'd wanted to make since before I started making video essays at all. There are sentences from that video that are major parts of the final Star Wars video. So there's actually paragraphs from like when I was like 20, I'm 25 now, 5-6 years ago. There's lines from like 5-6 years ago that are in that script that are in the final version. The initial monologue from the editor is mostly from that script. The whole like repeating thing, that whole monologue at the beginning, that all came from a much older script about monomyth and Star Wars and why. And it was funny because when I wrote that, I was talking about wanting Star Wars to go in the direction I think it could go in, and then Andor was created and it did the thing. But we decided just the video was too long. We cut a lot from it that we moved to eventual sequels, which we will do. It's just I don't know when. We got so many other projects going.
I mean, both of you don't have anything else going on, so it's not like
yeah, but and so Jesse wrote the first draft, and it was a very straightforward, very normal video essay, just very by the books. You know, George Lucas this and basically went through the monomyth, and then that was bad, and so that became what would be layer 2 and 3, which is the documentary layer and the video essay layer. And I basically just sliced that all apart, separated out the political analysis of the Star Wars films and the sort of factual analysis of the creation of the films, or like the sort of documentary sort of thing about Lucas and the films and how they were made. And I sliced those up, and in the process of slicing those things up, I realized that I needed a metatextual sort of representation of that, which is where the idea of the editor came from. And it's important to mention that I wrote the editor in November of that year, so like a year and a bit ago, because we'll get to the fake plagiarism claims later. There's a whole thing. Like the claims were so false that the person who created the thing I supposedly plagiarized wrote an essay about why those claims were false. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, but
yeah, I'll get to it in a bit. But anyway,
yeah.
so the editor character just came out of a need to fulfill something in the script, because I was worried that if we didn't have elements that pointed to I am tricking you right now, I'm aware that this is a false narrative, we get people really mad at us who don't finish the video, because I could already tell the script was going to be long. Like what Jesse sent me was long. I was making longer because I had so much Star Wars knowledge to impart, and so much political opinions about Star Wars and what it says is a political artwork. And so there's a ton of observations I added. It'd be really hard to tell like what's Jesse's and what's mine in that script, beyond like everything with the semiotics was mine. A lot of the George Lucas-y like documentary stuff was Jesse's, but it was very 50-50. It was a very 50-50 script in terms of writing. And then it was just a lot of working out like who was doing what, writing it to our own styles, so it sounded like us if we were saying something the other person had written, and vice versa. Though I think Jesse and I are both pretty good at writing to each other's strengths. And yeah, so the editor just sort of slowly spun out of what I did to the script, because what I did to the script is what the editor does in the video to the other layers, basically. So it's sort of a metatextual representation of a thing that I actually did as a script editor. And they became this sort of interesting representation of both the lie of great man myths and also the power of editors, and why the idea of the director as the absolute one and all is just incorrect because of how much impact an editor, just one other figure in that huge process of so many different things has. And then I worried that if I didn't add something else, I needed a narrative layer at the bottom. So that's where the animation came from. And at about the same time that I figured out that I needed the animation layer, I figured out that I needed this upper layer above the editor to make explicit that the editor is also a narrative to be questioned and examined and re-examined. And so yeah, it's a very weird work structurally, and Jesse did hire me to come in and make it weird structurally. And I think thematically it's a sequel to Queer Relativity in a lot of ways in terms of how it uses structure. I have an obsessive, and I mean that in the terms of I have mental illness, I mean obsessive need for medium to meet the message, if that makes sense. And so I'm constantly thinking of those types of structural things and how it functions. I often structure video essays off elements of how the original work structures itself in weird ways. It's hard to explain.
I think the unique structure of that video like really works to its benefit, because like if it was just more of a standard structure, like it would be pretty boring after 6 hours of watching that. Like it'd be like, okay, this is it. So it's
it
like
also wouldn't make half the points it makes.
Yeah, so like all those additional layers and framing devices and side stories, it engages the viewer so much more than if you were just dryly presenting the information.
And that was really important to me, was that it not be flat. That's what I'm looking for. I needed to not be flat. And I don't know, I always want to push what video essays can be as a medium, as with any medium I work in. And I think I do that. I think not to like toot my own horn too much, but considering the number of people that
Aranock, I brought you here to toot your horn, so toot your horn as much as you want.
The number of fairly famous video essayists and things that have watched Queer Relativity, and I know that for a fact. I feel pretty confident saying that Queer Relativity had an outsized influence on how people made video essays in 2023. And I'm hoping that I might see some of a similar effect within the impact of the Star Wars video on creatives in the space as well. Because like my videos aren't super popular or anything, but I do find I'm your favorite video essayist's favorite video essayist.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
It's like those bands that are musicians bands.
Yes. Yeah. Which is unfortunate. I'd love if I could have more success, because then it'd be easier to keep making art on my own channel and not having to do as much work for other people. But I love that work. And I would never stop doing work with other people, but it would be nice if I wasn't worried about food ever again. That'd be nice.
Yeah. By the way, everyone, Aranock has a Patreon and a Ko-Fi, and she does wonderful pathologic streams where we raise money in that, and she does funny voices. So
I do. Yeah, and so it's yeah, like I know Queer Relativity really pushed a lot of people. I mean, I've had people expressly tell me that it did, to make weirder stuff, to make things that push the boundaries more in terms of structure, in terms of style, and it's an important thing to me that it have that impact and that connection.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it had a huge impact on me when I watched it, because I mean, I've told you this before, but for the benefit of the audience, and I want to preface this by saying this: I am not saying this to put myself down. I'm saying this to raise you up. So, I watched Queer Relativity right after making my last video essay, and I watched it and was like, "Oh, I just made a worse version of this video. My videos will never be this good." And I'm not saying that because I think my videos are bad, but it's I just like when I saw that video, I saw what a video essay could be. And it just like there was just such like the gap between what I was doing and what you're doing is just so much. And it really warms my heart to see that like so many other people have kind of feel the same way and are using that to elevate their own art. So like if I was to remake my video essay, I would probably take a lot from Queer Relativity because we kind of talk about some similar stuff. But yeah, no, it's y'all go watch Queer Relativity, go watch the Star Wars video. Besides the videos that we've already talked about, what's the project that you've been the most proud of?
Oh, it's those two. It's those two easily. Nothing else even remotely compares in terms of being proud of it. But you know, I don't know. It's some of the writing I'm most proud of isn't even out yet. Like it's stuff that I'm working on that I'll hopefully have out this year, like the Undertale video, the Usher video. In terms of stuff that's already released, like it's Queer Relativity and Star Wars for sure, but you know, I'm proud of Nimona. I'm proud of I have complicated feelings towards the Matrix one just because there's some mistakes in there and stuff that was affected by people being shitty after the fact, where I feel I recently rewatched it with my girlfriend, and then you know, it's aged for me in certain skill wise. So I'm not as proud of it as I used to be because I'm just like, hey, there's like a major factual error. For context, I had a lot of sensitivity readers in that video, including a number of Jewish ones, and I didn't catch this either. Like no one caught this. Wachowskis are not Jewish, and I falsely state that in the video because a different video essayist said it in their video, and I just never thought to question it because why could I question something like that? Like it would be weird to me to question, especially considering who was making it and at the time the trust I had in that person. I don't want to get into they were outed as an abuser. It's this whole thing, and it's sad because I've shouted out some of their work in other videos as well. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, I mean,
their art it still matters to me, even, but it sucks. It definitely feels weird because I'm like, I can't change these videos now, and someone might watch this video and then go watch that person's video and not know. And there isn't really an easy way of dealing with that. You can't add something back into it.
Yeah, it's like you can put in a pinned comment, but not everyone reads those. No one's
gonna read it, and especially if they're going back through old videos.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will publish a retraction on that mistake on the Matrix video at some point. I just want it to be in a video where it's relevant and not just like a random aside in the middle of another video. Like I think it needs to be relevant to what I'm discussing. So yeah, there was a time where I would have said Matrix, but not anymore. So maybe Nimona, maybe Bechtel, maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy video I did with Jesse.
Oh, I love that video.
I'm pretty proud of my writing on the Barbie video. Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head right now.
So I do want to circle back on this idea of these false plagiarism claims, because plagiarism is kind of like, you know, the big like the cause célèbre that's going on right now with the massive H-bomb video, and you know, plagiarism is on everyone's mind, and I've actually seen this a lot coming from the right, where they are using fake plagiarism claims to take down people on the left. So a really famous example is Dr. Gay, who was formerly the dean of Harvard. Was it dean? I might not be using the right title, but basically got taken down due to some bogus plagiarism claims. And some people also leveled some bogus plagiarism claims on the Star Wars videos. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically someone two different people decided to falsely claim that I had plagiarized my friend Neil from the Leftist Cooks video on metamodernism, where they also have a character named the editor. The similarities basically begin and end at they have a character named the editor, and that character, in some ways, sort of represents that. Two people who work as editors for other people who work professionally as editors had the idea of representing aspects of editing and its impact on art with a character named the editor, but they serve completely different purposes in the videos. They have nothing in common in terms of style, visuals, purpose, characterization, personality. Like, it's really the most like, but the other thing that made it ludicrous is Jesse and I are both in Neil and Sarah's video there. Neil and Sarah are both in the Star Wars video. And neither Neil or Sarah, like, Neil's like, I genuinely didn't even register that those characters have the same name when I watched the Star Wars video. And I was like, I had the same thing. I didn't think of the metamodernism video at all, even though I like that video a lot. And it's a great video. Go watch it. Obviously, I support people watching my friend's work. And I would never want to take my friend's work, especially my friend who's literally in the video with me in this one.
Yeah.
And then in a video that I was a part of, it was so nonsensical. It was so unserious. But I think we're seeing a disturbing trend of people getting the very wrong message from H-Bomb's work, which is that you can try and harm a marginalized artist or person by falsely claiming they did plagiarism. And you can get away with it without being called bigoted. And they don't actually, that's actually incorrect. It's about both misrepresentation of H-Bomb, of what the purpose of that video was, or what the consequences of it was. But yeah, so it's just really bothers me. So Neil wrote this incredible video, sorry, not video, just a script, incredible script, essay, written essay on being words. How do words work? A written
words are made
essay
up.
that's on their Patreon. It's free to watch, like view, even if you aren't subscribed to their Patreon, but it's on the Leftist Cooks Patreon, called Something Happened on the Way to the Plagiarism. And I think it's a really good starting point of the conversation. I also have a Tumblr post about this that also shares that link, where I talk a little bit about my perspective on the whole thing and like where the editor came from. But it really frustrates me because, you know, and I've seen a lot of people getting the wrong messages from H-Bomb's work. And I want to be clear, I do not think that this is an issue with the H-Bomb's video or H-Bomb. I think this is just an issue of internet audiences. And the same with people have gotten the wrong messages from my work before. You know, like it just happens to all artists. And it sucks, but it happens and there's not much we can do about it. Like, we can try to head it off. And I think H-Bomb did do a fair bit to try and head off that type of behavior. I think there's a subsect of people that saw the video and thought it was about, you know, you should punish these people, particularly James Somerton. And that was not what the video was about. I think there's some people that saw it and their conclusion was, oh, this is a video about why James Somerton is a shitty person, not what the video is really about. And I say all of this as someone who was personally affected by and had a ton of friends that were directly attacked by James in ways that H-Bomb discusses in that video, the whole like fake claiming about murder stuff and getting his fans. I have deleted hundreds of comments from James Somerton's fans over the last year from Jesse's comment section, who said some horrendous shit. Jesse hasn't seen them and I'm never going to talk about them publicly, but like, James's fans were awful.
Yeah.
And he purposefully caused that on purpose for really no good reason against someone that tried to help him. And that was shitty. And I think James Somerton is a completely moralless, ethical, like devoid of ethics individual who really only cares about himself. I doubt he thinks that, but like, but the reason I say all that is that the only thing that I, and basically everyone else I know who was negatively affected by James, have wanted, including like Adequate Emily, who helped H-Bomb with the video, for example, it's just that he doesn't have a platform to continue doing harm. The goal there isn't to harm him, though. The goal isn't to punish him. And the fact that a lot of people are so trapped in punitive mindsets around this topic really disturbs me. And the fact that some people saw what H-Bomb did and went, aha, I can use this as a cudgel as a weapon against people, even when it makes no sense, really bothers me, because the point of the video is trying to teach you to critically think, something that all of my art is about, a lot of Jesse's art is about, including us. We're open to criticism. Jesse just did a video about some, I think, reasonable criticism of the Barbie video, which I'm annoyed that I didn't notice that specific turn of phrase in the one sentence. Or maybe, I don't know, I don't remember it being worded that way in the script, but I must have missed something. Anyway, point is, like, we're pretty open to criticism. I've openly admitted on this interview about mistakes that I have made, factual errors that I wish I could retract. But what I'm not open to, and what I feel like I deal with a lot as a trans woman, is people falsely presenting me as some, I don't know, evil, to force some sort of narrative about people like me that's really unhelpful, is really harmful, and it's really tiring to deal with. And it concerns me that I see this spilling into academic spaces to attack Black academics, to attack, like, that's very concerning, because plagiarism is a serious problem, and it is mounting. The misuse of my field of expertise, machine learning and AI, to like, I want to be clear, I don't think copyright law should exist, but I do think that accreditation and sourcing would matter even if capitalism is gone. And I don't think you can get rid of copyright without getting rid of capitalism first, because otherwise you're just going to harm a ton of small creators and make the current situations with big corporations 1,000 times worse, because they'll just steal whatever they want with a way bigger budget, and there's nothing a small creator would be able to do. But yeah, that's a whole other conversation. People see when you're like, no, I oppose copyright, but only once capitalism is gone. You can't do one without the other. Like, you just can't, because then all you do is just remove any protections from artists like me, small artists that do good work but don't have huge platforms and lawyers and whatever. Like some of the reasons some of those copyright laws exist in the first place was because of major Hollywood and other, like, big corporations stealing work from artists. But, like, I'm also of the opinion that the copyright an artist has should end when they die. It should be to the artist, not the company that hired them. Like, I think it should only be the artist that gets the copyright. It's a whole other thing. The artists that work on it. If there's many artists,
we're gonna start a second podcast about copyright law and.
But like, going back to the plagiarism thing, so, like, I take plagiarism excessively seriously. I have my name on a research paper. I care about this type of academic integrity, and it really upset me, because I took it so seriously when I got that message. I was like, oh my god, like, did I even do that by accident? Like, I'm messaging Neil, like, freaking out, and Neil's like, this is ridiculous, this is absurd. Why the fuck does this person claim this? And I was like, oh thank god, because I was so nervous that like, in some way that this was going to turn into, because I've seen how many other I know so many other trans women that have had minor genuine mistakes or non-mistakes or just things made up about them, that have resulted in them being basically removed, like, unpersoned from the internet and from society. And I, frankly, like, as a trans woman that lives pretty openly in the public eye, am endlessly afraid of that eventually occurring to me. And it's even worse for trans people of color, to be clear. Like that type of thing is even worse. But yeah, I think people are very comfortable falsely claiming things to try to demonize trans women, and people are way too comfortable immediately believing it. So it's very relieving that nothing bad happened out of that situation. But I'm just like, what happens when it's a situation that's more genuinely ambiguous, or where the person who was not plagiarized isn't, like, the type of situation I have with Neil, and it's frustrating because, like, we have two issues happening simultaneously, where we do have a genuine huge industry of plagiarism on YouTube that is a problem, and it needs to be addressed.
There's so many AI channels coming out that they're just stealing scripts. There's AI voices, and there's so many. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and then you have all of these opportunistic creeps who are taking a genuine issue and being like, how can I use this to harm marginalized people? Yeah.
So I would like to move on to a less distressing topic. So, because this has been like, honestly, this interview is just like, it's been such a great talk. It's just flown by. So I'm making an attempt will be made to try to wrap this up. But I would really like to know, well, I kind of already know, but I want everyone to know, what's next for the enigmatic eldritch being that we all know as Aranock?
Oh God, there's a lot that comes next. I'm working on many things right now. I think most immediately, probably the next thing to release will either be Ren Fair Cheese, my piece about a genre that Late Night and I coined. That's very fun and very sweet. I want to reshoot some things, and I want to add some additions to the script. I want to cover another piece of media that I didn't think I was originally cover. It's the whole thing. So it'll get done eventually. It's partially edited. I need to add the things that I want to add. I had this whole bit that was inspired by seeing a post on Tumblr and just some feelings about my girlfriend and stuff that I want to add. That I think will be sweet. Cute. But I'm mostly talking about Princess Bride, Stardust, and Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves in that video. But it's a video about emotional contrast and the value of it in art, and it's a fun one, which is not usual for me. And I'm like, am I actually going to pull off keeping it pretty fun? Yeah, there's
I think
one
you will,
section that I think that will make people cry because it's made everyone I've read the script to cry, but just one.
Just one.
Just one.
You had a lot of fun with your end of the year video, and I really like that video, and I really like that you have fun in that video.
Yeah, I did that in like 4 days though. It was not fun making it.
Oh yeah,
it was fun, but then it was not fun.
No, I get what you mean.
I think I was up like 34 hours before I went home for Christmas. Like my mom was going to pick me up, my brother and I, to drive us back down to my parents' place, and yeah, I finished it that morning, and that's for the release. It's a little rough, but it's pretty good. I think I did a good job.
Yeah, it's more like lighthearted than your other stuff.
Did.
So
yeah, very lighthearted, very chill.
Yeah.
But yeah, Run for Cheese is like one lighthearted video because the rest are gonna get yeah. I'm hoping the next one on my channel after that will be Undertale, but it probably won't. It will probably be whatever I do for my WGST class this semester. Because that's what Bechtel was actually that's actually an academic paper that got about like a 90%, I think, in my class that I did it for.
I like that video a lot.
For a university reading writing course, getting 90%. Very hard to get, because like those types of subjective marking things are very hard to get a good mark in.
Oh yeah, it's not like a math course. It's like, oh yeah, I got the right answer, so I got 100.
Yeah, so I'm current topic I'm considering for that is a piece on perspective, male gaze, and video game protagonists, particularly transgender representation within video games. So it's complicated. I can read you a tiny little excerpt of like what I was writing earlier today.
Special exclusive sneak preview.
It may not end up being like
viewers.
this in the video. And a lot of this is quotes. While the game designer creates and molds the context in which the player forms perspective, the player, unlike any other medium, is fundamentally able to break the perspective of the game in and of itself. Quote from Berger, essay 1 of 7 of the Ways of Seeing collection of essays. The invention of the camera also changed the ways in which men saw paintings, painted long before the camera was invented. The uniqueness of every painting was once part of the uniqueness of the place where it resided. Sometimes the painting was transportable, but it could never be seen in 2 places at the same time. When the camera reproduces a painting, it destroys the uniqueness of its image. As a result, its meaning changes, or more exactly, its meaning multiplies and fragments into many meanings. End quote. Open quote from my video on the Matrix. In transgender history, Susan Stryker states that, open quote from Susan Stryker, back in the analog era, a representation, word, image, idea was commonly assumed to point to some real thing. A person's social and psychological gender was commonly assumed to point to that person's biological sex in exactly the same way. Gender was considered a representation of a physical sex, but a digital image or sound is something else entirely. It's unclear exactly how it relates to the world of physical objects. It doesn't point to some real thing in quite the same way, and it might in fact be a complete fabrication built up pixel by pixel or bit by bit. Transgender gender representation works the same way, end quote. The Matrix by This is again from a Matrix script. The Matrix, by examining gender in the terms of Baudrillard's concepts and simulation simulacra, engages in this conversation around what the representation is pointing to. It is asking what is our true body and if it's a choice we can make, or if the representation is something that we are assigned by the system. End quote. Video games, by decentralizing the camera from the creator and placing it in the hands of a player, particularly when that player is able to shape the vessel through which they engage, destroys the idea of a central artistic expression or perspective. It polyfragments meaning even further from the effect that the original camera had. Ludonarrative thus becomes a meeting point between author and audience, where audience takes on elements of being an author. The viewership of gameplay, particularly in live streams, returns an audience and furthers the placement of player as the author, and the viewer is also then able to influence the actions of the player, thus becoming part author themselves. As such, any true distinction between the subject that is viewing and the object that is viewed becomes destroyed. The distinction between author and audience is altered, and so too is the distance between viewer and the character within the story. The act of forcing an audience to not just passively experience a marginalized perspective from the outside, but instead place them in control of and thus connected to a marginalized avatar creates a unique possibility for connection and understanding. By making the avatar of the player marginalized, the marginalized also becomes a fundamental subject, often the primary one acting on the world in which they inhabit. Player avatars are not inherently or exclusively a subject with agency. Some games very purposely play with lack of agency in their design, but generally the primary character to take actions that change the story is the player's avatar. After all, in most games, there is no story until the player, and by extension the avatar, act on that world. Each player's experience in most games is going to be different because they and their avatar do things differently at different speeds with different levels of capability from every other instance of that avatar and story. While all art is uniquely experienced to some extent, video games uniquely create your story of that game. Even as the player knows they are separated from this avatar, when someone discusses a game, they use terms like I and me for acts the avatar takes. Often they are also experiencing being referred to as that character. They are identified together. There are, of course, exceptions that draw attention to this connection and disconnection that treat the player themselves as a character within the diegesis, but these are rare and specifically use that rarity to comment. Games often engage in expressions of queer temporality. As I discussed in The Matrix is intrinsically trans, open quote, which while the bullet time of this film is a gorgeous visual representation of action, it's also an expression of how queer people experience time in a different way from non-queer people. If most action is an expression of heterotemporality, then bullet time, a unique technical feat at the creation of the Matrix, is a literal queer perception of time. To explain it further, as Keegan puts it, quote, the effect is a contradiction in temporality that simultaneously alters the perception of matter. The rules of classical mechanics are suspended, allowing the camera to capture unprecedented perspectives within time, end quote. Lana said that it came about because, open quote, we talked about how to begin to express the kind of idea we're looking for, of being able to push at the boundaries of reality. Games, by implementing the ability to enact the squaring of temporality, place the player avatar and their controller in a unique position to push at the boundaries of reality. That's what I've written so far. Today.
Oh boy. No,
Yeah.
that was awesome. That was great. Yeah, that whole like with your video game character, it's like that is you. Like, you know, it's like I talk about my Baldur's Gate character. It's like that's me.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about how allowing trans characters to be created in character creations like alters perceptions of what self can be, and it'll be a whole thing. And I'm also going to talk about like why trans characters as main characters matter. I'm probably going to hit on Celeste. I play this game called, I think it's called Tell Me Why. I think it's by Don't Know It.
Oh yeah, I have that in my library. I haven't played it yet.
I haven't played it. It was free on Steam at one point, but I'm sure to play that. I'm also going to probably hit on the empty representation of something like Call of Duty and its use of non-binary characters in the
If I can make a suggestion for a game featuring a trans main character, a super lesbian animal RPG, a game I will not shut up about.
I don't have time. That was way too long. I don't have time. It's also not mainstream enough. I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Because it's a class on popular media. So yeah.
No, that's totally fair.
It's a class on images of sexuality and gender within popular media, and so I'm like
no.
Yeah, I want to take Berger's. I want to take Berger's ways of seeing and the concept of male gaze and apply it to a video game analysis that discusses transgender representation, and I think, well, it'll be fun.
yeah. I just honestly, I cannot shut up about that game because it's so awesome. But yeah. By the way, Miastra absolutely loves your voice acting and your performance. And also,
What
yeah,
can
we
I
got some people
say?
in chats
I'm a bit of a
talking about Tell Me Why. It's very emotionally heavy, apparently. So,
Yeah, I know that, but it's, I find it easier when I'm doing it for work because then I'm watching it there's an academic distance sometimes that I have when I'm
yeah.
working for certain things. But yeah, it's a thing where like I think video games are best understood as being a actor on a stage in a theater play.
Mm.
And this is a comparison. I'm not the person that came up with this. A different incredible trans video essayist did, really, which is Ruby from Codex Entry. Really made this comparison with her videos, Pathologic, for those who will never play it. Everyone should go watch that. Ruby's actually the one that has been helping me write Undertale pretty heavily. Like I'm giving her a co-writing credit.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's what the future looks like for me, is a lot of videos like that. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Jesse and I have a billion projects we planned for this year. The first one, which was supposed to be a simple thing, but then we got more complicated. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's good. But we were just gonna do like a quick sort of like reaction-y thing to William Shatner's terrible prank reality TV show Invasion Iowa. And then our conversations got really in-depth and interesting. We were like, we have to write this. We have to write a full script.
Hey, I'm here for it.
So I finished writing that yesterday. Like Jesse did her pass, and then I did my pass. So I did my pass on Jesse's script yesterday. Added a bunch of stuff, and then I will be editing that video. So I expect to enjoy my unique editing style soon.
I will be. Looking forward to it.
So we're gonna slice in some of what we recorded on that initial reaction thing. But yeah, I'll mostly be a traditional Jesse gender video essay with some little Aranock asides.
Always looking forward to those.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move on to our concluding questions. So we have a couple questions that we like to ask everyone. But first of all, is there anything that we missed about your art that you'd like to make sure that you say?
I think the biggest thing is just watch everything critically, including my stuff. If you watch my stuff and you come to the conclusion that you shouldn't be watching it critically, you've missed the entire message. Because what I want is people to develop fundamental curiosity for life, for art, for being. Because yeah, I think art is living, and yeah, I just think it's really important to engage fully and emotionally and sincerely with art. I want you to a line in this upcoming Run for a Cheese script, which I think is that I'm gonna grab it. Sorry. Because I really want to say it the right way. I wrote it good, and you like trying to say something off the top.
Good.
I done did write it good, so I want to say it nice. That's really the message of this channel, that you should love and feel things sincerely and with your full chest, and hate the systems that actively discourage that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So
the conclusion for that video.
I can't wait.
Is it a backdoor I hate the MCU video? Perhaps.
Oh.
I'm gonna say some spicy shit about why I think the MCU is bad art.
I am an MCU enjoyer, but I will be the first to admit that most of those movies are mediocre to bad.
No, that's the thing. I've watched most of it. Like I do get something from them, even as they're trash. But they frustrate me. They frustrate me because they're incapable of sincerity. And the whole point of the video is the value of sincerity and the value of emotional contrast. And Marvel videos are like tonal mush. They're just the same tone all the way from beginning to end.
I mean, oh boy, like this is a topic that can get me going. Like we could go on for another couple hours, but people gotta go. So
yeah.
But my next question, so we asked this of everyone, and it's actually my favorite question, just because like just in the current climates, so much of our stories are kind of framed in negativity and pain and loss and all that. But I think it's far more important that we share our joy. Can you share an experience that you've had with gender euphoria?
Sorry, I'm trying to think of one that I feel comfortable sharing in a public space.
Oh, like I'm not going to make you share anything you're not comfortable with, but you know.
Like recently,
it doesn't have
it's
to be.
mostly. I mean, there's all sorts of little things. I think the main one right now is just the way my girlfriend looks at me and talks to me.
Oh no, that's so
I was trying to find how to word that in a way that I was like, yeah,
I love that for you.
they
so
make
much.
me feel beautiful, and yeah,
adorable.
I love him. The best.
And lastly, what would you like to make sure that folks know about your perspective on gender and non-binary, trans, and or gender diverse issues?
That's hard. I have a theory of gender that's let's say built on but different from Judith Butler's, which is that I don't think that gender is necessarily inherently just a performance. I think that gender is feelings or lack thereof, in the case of agender people, and that the performance is how we express those feelings. But just like with any feelings, we can, you can hide them, we can obscure them, we can perform feelings we don't actually feel inside. You can be happy and forcing yourself to be angry or otherwise, you can be sad and pretending you're happy. But I think the reason why being in the closet and why performing the wrong gender and things hurts so much is the same reason that lying about our feelings to ourselves is so painful in so many other ways. I think bottling it is destructive, and so I think it's gender is just something we feel, and I think anyone who tries to tell you that you're wrong about your own emotions is probably a fool, or trying to
sell you something,
or trying to sell you something.
Well,
life is pain, Princess.
Yes.
He says differently. He's trying to sell you something.
Yes. I specifically said that quote because I knew you would get it.
I might reference that in the video, perhaps.
Yes. I mean, that's like disclaimer. Princess Bride is one of my top 5 movies of all time. So,
if it's not in your top 5, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing with your life? Honestly,
you should be enjoying good art. I'm kidding. If you don't like Princess Bride, it's perfectly valid. Everyone has their own tastes.
Everyone is allowed to have their wrong opinions.
I don't believe in right and wrong opinions, but I do.
No, that was a joke.
But I think
that was a joke.
But it is. I still am just like every time I'm like, oh, like I don't know. I'm also very much someone who I hate when I don't like something, and I want to understand why people get out of it, even as I hate it.
Anyways, it has been absolutely wonderful to have you on. It's been a wonderful conversation. So Aranock is a disabled queer artist who examines media and culture intersectionally. And speaking of what are you even doing with your life? If you're not subscribed to your YouTube channel, what are you doing with your life? Go do that right now. You can find their socials. If you're watching this live, you can find that in the Twitch chat. If you're listening to this in the future, it will be in the show notes. The link tree will be there. Here is this week's cloud or query that you, our audience, can answer on our social media platforms.
So this is the same question I ended the Star Wars video with, but I think it's one that's really important. And I think it's one that's important to ask and re-examine, which is, what stories do you hold close and why? Just something to ponder.
All right, so next week we are off, and on the 29th we'll be chatting with Sona Manassian about disability justice in queer choirs. Jennifer would also like to thank all of our supporters on Patreon. That's Holly Blash, Winter Vespers, Loch Ness Gamer, Justin Baker Rojas, Yaicio, Ray of Swords, Me, The Hessian, and Trans Capybara. So I've been your host, Miranda, with our wonderful guest, Aranock, and hope everyone had a wonderful time listening to this, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays on twitch.tv/gendermeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited versions of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you'd like the host to answer or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at GenderfulPodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clouder wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You can take a few minutes to rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power!
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Here's our artist credit. Genderful is hosted by Miranda Katita and GenderMeowster. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful's live stream is produced by Mirami. Genderful is edited and mixed by Transgriffin and FreeRangeMegs. Genderful's promos and thumbnail graphic are designed by Transgriffin. Genderful's social media is managed by Kainsey. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by FreeRangeMegs, also known as Soma. The current GenderMeowster logo was designed by Siptopia. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved.
Trans rights are human rights. That's right.